Welcome to this edition of Talk with Taz. I'm your host, Dr. Teresa A. Smith, Dr. Taz, and today we're going to figure out how we can write. Everybody is writing, but sometimes we feel like, I don't know if I can do it. Do I have to be this person or that person in order to become an author? Well, today I have with me Suzetta Perkins. Now, Suzetta is not new to writing. She has authored 18 novels. Yes, 18 novels. And she's a mentor to aspiring writers, and she's a storyteller who brings real life struggles to the page. So today, take your pen out or your phone out and take notes. Because you want to make sure that you hear everything and capture it. So as when you are writing, you think, oh, I can't do it. You've got someone who's there to mentor you through that process. So Suzetta, I want to welcome you to Talk with Taz.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you.
Thank you. You've had an incredible journey as an author and a mentor. Can you share a moment when you faced a major obstacle in your writing career and how you pushed through it?
Um, I'm really searching back. I really think I have had a fantabulous time writing, but I really believe it was when the pandemic hit. And I had been writing for a good while at that time, but when the pandemic hit, I guess all that was going on, with this disease, this COVID, and not knowing, losing a lot of relatives and people that friends that you knew, and then the aftermath of George Floyd's death happening in the same year, 3 months, almost 3 months later. Well, no, it was even longer because the pandemic had actually started in 2019.
Mhm.
um I don't know, I couldn't write. I really couldn't write, and this thing was really hurting me. When I say hurting me, I just couldn't grasp you know what this pandemic, because of course I had never lived through a pandemic before. And I just I couldn't write, even though I was at home for a short period of time, because then my boss, I worked for the chancellor at the university at the time, and then I was brought back because of my role that I played at the university. But even at that, even when I went home, I just couldn't write. But it wasn't until later in that year, of first part of 21, that I actually penned Fallen Leaves, which actually follows my main character on her journey through the pandemic and the aftermath of George Floyd's death. And Gypsy, not trying to get into that particular
Mhm.
story, but that resonates with me right now. But
Mhm.
Gypsy isn't me. She doesn't characterize anything that I personally went through, but I wanted to get her to feel, or to portray some of the feelings I may have had, while I was out there, looking at the TV, like so many of us who were sitting at in front of the TV every day, and then they kept giving the count, and then our loved ones, everybody posting on Facebook, oh God, we done lost so and so, and people are at my age, and so, that was I would say, Teresa, that for me was somewhat a depressing time, if I'm willing to admit that, for me, and where my writing, really kind of diminished some, even after it had kind of, slowed down some. I didn't begin with the same zeal that I started with, but thanks be to God, I'm writing again. So that was it, the pandemic.
Well, I thank you, first of all, Suzetta, for being vulnerable with the audience, because sometimes, people look at us as authors and they think, oh, it's just great. They just write, 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 and there's never that struggle. But you're
Mhm.
right, during that time period, it impacted everyone differently. And
Yes.
as storytellers, I believe, we have to be able to connect I don't know if I'm going to say this the right way. We have to be able to connect with ourselves internally in order
Hmm.
to bring that story forward. So
Yes.
when I'm out of balance, I can't write the way I would normally write. I may
Mhm.
write a little bit, but I may look at that and say, "What is that?" Because I'm not able to connect with myself as that
Mhm.
storyteller to then be able to connect with my characters. So,
Yeah.
you just showed us, even though you've got 18 novels, writing a book is no easy feat. So,
Mhm.
what advice would you give to someone who started writing but is struggling to finish?
What I tell, because I do on Tuesday nights through my church, I have a group that I've established called Literary Inc. And what I do is I help guide aspiring writers to pen a book all the way to publishing, and basically, if you have my first thing is, if you have an idea, before I even go to the fundamentals, because writing has, it's a mechanics to writing. And so I go through all that, because those are things that are important, when they start writing, so that they are given the skills or the knowledge of how to start out, how to place it on the paper, when you're typing, that is, dialogue, settings, all those things. But my first thing is to write. If you have a story that is emboldened within you, write. That is my first thing. Write. Even if it's not in a particular order that you might write the book, get it down on paper, computer, your computer, of course, I just saying paper because I'm talking about writing, but get it down, write, write. And then you can go back and organize later, But even now, with the new group that I'm working with, most of them are writing autobiographies, in some form of fashion. But, they have maybe set about writing, giving yourself some topics that you want to write from, and then write within those topics what you want to say. And then you can, when you are ready to sit down and write, you have a framework from which to write your stories. And that's basically for nonfiction,
Mhm.
um, for fiction novels, because I am a fiction writer. And I have a story in my head. I don't outline. A lot of people outline. I'm not an outliner. I have what I call a pyramid, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I set about, plotting that, even though my end changes sometimes two or three, four times, but just kind of plot out what you want to write. Uh, if you kind of have a title within your head, put the title, because titles for me helps me to carry my story. Then make a theme. What is the theme of your book? You may not know the whole story in the beginning, because I don't always know the story. I'm typing and I get an epiphany, and I'm like, oh my God, yes, yes, this goes. Oh my goodness, yes, yes, yes. And those things happen. Or I may change something about a character to really boost the story. And I've had readers to say, girl, why did you do that to, I remember my first book, why did you do that to Angelica? I said, girl, I have done my work, because I have got the reader to uh, to react in a certain way. And that's what an author's job is. You're enticing the reader to either like or dislike, like the antagonist, dislike the no, like the protagonist, dislike the antagonist, or you can even switch it around, because you are the master manipulator of your story, and so maybe jot categories, things that you really want to see happen within your story. If you have forethought, so that's another suggestion. But write down, if you can have a title, your theme of your story, a plot. That'll help you to get going. You at least, even if you don't know the full story, you have an idea where you want to go with your story.
Well, Suzette, now you've talked about the craft of
Mm-hmm.
writing,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a craft. And, sometimes aspiring writers think it's just storytelling.
Yes.
It's just that, it's just a purely talent base, but you've just talked about that craft that has to go
Yes.
with that. So what are some common mistakes that, say, new writers may make, and how can they improve their skills? Because you talked about things that are part of the craft, but what are some of the common mistakes and a possible solution for a new writer?
Okay. Oh God, there's so many. I have a list of 40 common mistakes that writers make, and that's what my publisher gave me, well, gave all of us under her wing, this thing, and I'm like, and I still use that to this day. I use it with my folks. But first of all, is that, uh, um, the scene. Okay, the scene. First of all, no, let me start here. Okay, your very first page, or your opening, or what have you, you got a hook. You got a hook. You got to grab the reader. Okay, because a reader, if the story ain't good and it's not sounding, is not encouraging them for to keep on reading, okay, they're going to shut the book. Your first 100 words, you got to sell your story, okay? Your first 100 words. The other things, the rules, small practical things, I want to say it because I think they're important, is that, you have to, when you, for, if you want to get it published and you're looking for a mainstream publisher, I always say, set your page up. Okay. I use most everyone uses Word. Okay. Word. I use Word, double space, because when the person is typesetting, that's how they want it, want to receive it. Even at Amazon and those, double space, 1 inch margin around, have a dictionary, a thesaurus, um, pencil, little notes so you can jot down things. Those are those simple things that I suggest or tell my writers. You need to have that. And someone shared that with me, a thesaurus, because you don't want to use the same word 20 times. There's other ways of saying the same thing or using that. That's why the thesaurus, the dictionary, even though many of our um, uh, computers, or most all of our programs, Word, whatever you're using, have a spell checker. Although spell checker doesn't always catch it, or there's synonyms and this thing, and you spell male MAIL, but then there's MALE. There's so many interchangeable words, and then again, depending on your dialect, the dialect that you're utilizing, you need to stay whatever dialect your character is utilizing. You need to stay within that dialect. Okay, they can be hood over here, and then they speak in the King James English over there. Okay, one big thing I have is, and I think I'm going off the what you're asking me, but I do want to get it while it's in my head. I always forget if I don't say it now. Characterization. Do character profiles. Okay, and I guess when I start talking about the having, well, character profiles. When my character profiles, I do a psychological, physiological, and sociological aspect of my characters. Okay, even though you may not utilize all of those things that you put down on paper, this is basically for your main characters. I need to know what their height, what their weight. I mean, they may not be important, but they may be important to this story. What hair color, how they wear their hair, what color eyes they have. You can't be blue eyes here and brown eyes over there unless you got contact lenses and you got to tell us that. Okay, even their parents, who their parents are, what their religious affiliation is, sisters, brothers, Anyway, all those kind of different things, do what kind of food do they like? I would sit down. I remember sitting down with my daughter and son-in-law one time, and I was asking them to help me with a character that lived in Alabama, and my son-in-law, that's where he's from, right? And so anyway, I was talking about something fettuccine or whatever. He said, "Mom, they gonna eat chicken and mac and cheese." I said, "You are
Mhm.
right." But those
Yeah.
things are, and yeah, you got to think about those things, And then if you're writing um historical fiction or a period piece, I'll put it like that. Okay, if you're writing in 1928, the story I'm actually reading now, you can't have a cell phone in 1928 because cell phones weren't out. Everything has to, even if it's fiction, it has to match up. Okay, Beyonce wasn't out in 1952, so you can't have a 1952 props and Beyonce singing when Beyonce wasn't even born in 1952. Okay, those kind of small things, they're not small really. And setting happens to be a part of that. I know I'm working with one of my writers now, um, who was born during the 60s, I guess. Yeah, 60s, yeah, late, early 60s. And in her piece, because she's doing an autobiography, and she brings in a moment where Dr. King actually shows up. She was there when he shows up in her street. She's from Mississippi, okay? Okay, in that time period, yes, and he actually was there. And so setting and the scene really, they can even become characters, and they are important to the story because you're letting the reader know, okay, this is in the 1960s, okay, when he marched. If you show things about that happened to these characters during those time periods. But other than that, the one thing that I have to say, getting back to your topic, is that the overuse of certain words, and I had to learn this, because it is when you're a brand new author, you don't know all of these things, okay? But the word just, because, very, adverbs, overuse of those words. In fact, I remember my publisher said, "You put just 250 something times in this story." I'm like, "No, I didn't." But then when I went and looked it up, I'm like, "Oh my God, replace it with only or rewrite the sentence because what?" Okay, there you said something, it happened because of something, but just tell us what it is. The other thing is that a lot of writers, they just tell us instead of showing. In fiction, you got to show, not tell the story. By showing, you show the action of the action, the showing, or yeah, showing is action. It moves the story forward. It uh endears, a reader to the story. And like for me, I like movement in my story. I don't want to, okay, like, I hate to say it, like our friend TP, he can have a character and I think on this particular show is on tonight, the person been pregnant for 3 seasons. Okay, let's move the story forward, that kind of thing. But that's what showing does. When you're telling the story, there's things that you're going to tell, but show us. When you move, when I have somebody to get a cup of water, let's say, or go to the sink, I will map that out myself to see what they go through, if that is important to the story. You don't have to tell everything. And description, give us a little description. Um, we need to see what the character looks like. That's why I talked about that character profile thing. We need to see what the character look like. When you introduce a character, you don't have to give everything in the very beginning, when the character first shows, but we need to see something, like people say, "Girl, honey, I love so and so." That is I said, "No, I wrote that character for me," that kind of thing. You would elicit those kinds of conversations and so forth. And there was one thing, it just moved right out of my head that I thought that was really important. Mm. Oh, there's so many things, even like how you write yours, um, the titles of books and songs and things like that, and the use of them within the story. There's those things that have to be presented to a new writer so that they understand what they can use and what they can't use, because you don't want them to be close to plagiarism, because I like to listen to songs, but I just maybe use a piece, just a little tad piece out of it, and give that recording artist, they or whoever it is, whatever it is, I give them their props,
Mhm.
within the story. But there's only so much you can do, without getting permission, which you have to pay a fee for, license for, to utilize their work. And that's what I do. Like I have a poem in one of my books. I think it is in Fallen Leaves. And what I did, the person I haven't known, but I do contracts, and I pay that person for the use of their work. But
Mhm.
like I said, there are so many things, girl. I could just keep going on and on, but I don't want to get bogged down in, in sharing all those things.
Well, thank you, Suzetta, because I think that you gave the aspiring writer, that person who's trying to go from an idea to actually getting started, you really provided a framework of things that they need to consider. So we
Hmm.
want them to start writing, but after you've written, you provided really it almost becomes like a checklist that they can
Hmm.
then use to
Yeah.
look at what to evaluate what they've written and to begin to
Hmm.
modify what they've
Hmm.
written. And guys, when we say written, we mean you can write
Right.
longhand, but we mean on the
Exactly.
computer. But what you've written, then you can start to evaluate and refine
Right.
it. So I
Right.
think that the common mistakes and how you bring it back to people's mind, and then how you modify that. I think that was
Hmm.
a good piece of
Hmm.
advice that folks have gotten there. Now, when we understand that we're writing, we know what we need to check to make sure that we've done properly. Do you have a ideal writing routine that you use yourself? And if so, what does that look like for you?
A writing routine. Well, for me, I used to, when I was working, after would get home and get my family settled, then I'd go to my space that I had cornered off as my little office space, and I would go to writing. And one of my suggestions is that you do it the same time every day.
Mhm.
Do it, go, you get your chores, and you you carve out that space and time for you to do it. I think that is, one of the the most helpful thing, that you can, because that forms habits, a good habit, and you will continue, and you won't get um uh hmm, I'm talking, I got a mental block. The
Uh,
writer's block
what is
is
that?
what I'm talking. Writer's block. You won't get it so often. Uh, I hardly ever get it because my head is, it's, I don't know, my wheels are always turning. I have this thing in my head, and that's why I always kept a recorder, piece of paper or something always beside me, because ideas would come, and if I left them on, marked down or whatever, then I would lose them, and so I always had these ideas, and sometimes I was overflowing with ideas, but really establish a place, um, that is yours, that you can go to, and that you can write. I think that is very, very important.
And I agree with that. But you said something just a moment ago, Suzetta, about a recorder. I think you said a recorder, and I
Yes.
don't know if you
Uh-huh.
said you had a pad, but you said you had a recorder. Well,
Right.
you talked about the book that you wrote in the aftermath. I think you said it was Fallen Leaves,
Yes.
with
Hmm.
the aftermath of the pandemic and George Floyd. So we know that you like to interweave real world events
Yes.
into your
Right.
stories. So
Right.
how do you make them? engaging and relatable, because that's not an easy task to do, because I look at the pandemic and that impacted people on so many different levels. Then we look at the death of George Floyd. There's so many different perspectives about what occurred there. So how do you make the real life events that you include in your stories relatable and engaging without, I'm just going to be honest, without being offensive? How do you do that?
Well, let's take fallen leaves for example. We all, as you said, we were all I hate to use the word, but I'm gonna say it, benefactors of that, okay, of that time period. We all lived through it, so you know how you felt. You know what went on with you as you navigated through, the pandemic, and so that's what, even though again, I didn't go through what my character, but she has some of the feelings that I had, the feelings of anger and wanting to, um, do something about it. But I couldn't, so, I had these first responders. I took real life and I do a lot of social, bring social issues and current events and so forth into my stories. And I just make them that person, that character's own, the aftermath of George Floyd. Yes, we were all sitting there and sitting there in front of the TV. And I don't know how many times people have said that. So my character was sitting in front of the TV, I made it her story, she was sitting in front of the TV when it happened, the things that happened. And so in fact, this particular story began in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is where I live. And so all the things that happened, I'm chronicling all the things, all the marches, all the things that happened in front of Fayetteville State where I worked and all of that, I chronicled those things. Okay. And so guess what? So did Gypsy, okay? My character, she experienced the same things that I knew about. And I'm, in fact, I said when I was writing this, I said, well, okay, I didn't go to the marches, but I'm gonna have Gypsy go to the marches, okay? And what I did was I went online and got clips, I have like a big binder. I use things like this and I put all my material, my research and so forth, because even if it's a fiction novel, you have to do research. So I did, went through and pulled out the different things that happen around the city, clips, newspaper clippings and what have you, things that happen around the city. And my character, she participated, okay? She participated in those things. So it was real. Those people who live in Fayetteville that read my book, like, girl, yeah, I remember this. I remember that thing, and that's what, endears people to a story, like, God, I remember this and blah, blah, blah. And in fact, that story even goes, well, because of the character, I wanted to really uplift her, and so she goes even to the West Coast and I do some things, and some of it is made up, imagine, because I'm trying to, get this storyline for this person. But then there are certain things, the elements that happen. I'm from Oakland, California, so I use some things that I knew about. And I'm gonna tell you, people fact check you, okay? I had a person that said, girl, you had so much. She said, but I fact checked you. You were on it. I said, yeah, girl, honey, I did my homework, okay? I did my homework, but I wanted to put in elevating this character, I wanted there to be some realism, and so having, experienced it myself. In fact, even in the second book, Black Diamond, I take my character, that same character, now she's, anyway, I don't want to give the story away, but anyway, she's, another fantastic thing happens in her life, But anyway, I take her overseas. Okay, I took her to places I've been. Okay, I've been to all those places and so forth. Of course, things have changed since I've been to in that particular book to those particular places. But what I did my research. I have pages and pages of what has happened over there, and I did it also in terms of Black Lives Matter, because if you recall, they were not only marching and protesting in the United States, they were doing it. It was all over the world, And so I looked up those particular things, and I had Gypsy, she was telling people, she was from the United States, and she worked with the, Black Lives Matter movement, people of color that she ran into. Anyway, you'll have to read it, but it opened up different avenues. It opened up different conversations, because through that I found out that in Italy, I believe it is that there's a street renamed for George Floyd, and an Italian Afro guy who was also um, the victim of police brutality there, and they named that street for that person and George Floyd. So I mentioned that in my story. These things are real. I put realism in the story. But it takes, like I said, research, and so forth. And so, people come up to me. I did a book club in Charlotte this past weekend, and they were asking me some of the same questions. Well, how did you get that name? Where did you? I said, well, I've been there, I've done that, And so, but I weaved it into the story to make the story real, and so forth. So now when I go, I went to Italy last year. I went to Milan. I've been all over Italy before. I lived over in Europe for 10 years. But anyway, I went to Milan this time and last year. And the third book in that series, which I'm writing now, is one of the not the main character, but the main character's niece, who needed a story. In fact, one of the readers at this book club says, I know you're writing a third book. Oh my God, this book. Oh my goodness. You're writing a third book. I said, I am. I'm really, really in the middle of it. And she says, I bet you it's about Reese. And because she needs her story. How about that's what my story is about? So true readers, if you have penned a story and you have penned it in such a way that readers who, they love your stuff, they take to your stuff, they can recognize what is, because I used to get, she's passed on now, but we get pages from people, readers, say, okay, this should happen in this next book. This should happen in blah, 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 blah. Then I said, okay, those are things that are encouraging to me. And that lets me know that I'm doing a good job, that I'm getting the reader, I'm maintaining a reader, just like, a show, or a movie or whatever, they have a sequel. Okay, you want to write well enough that, they'll come on back, for a second cut, so to speak. So that's what I do. I pour out and I do research that will encompass whatever it is that I'm trying to convey in a story.
Well, Suzetta, you have helped us to understand that if you are an aspiring author, aspiring writer, you need to contact Suzetta Perkins. She has mentored many authors, including a Girl Scout who's on her way to being published. So, Suzetta, how can people reach out to you so that they can seek you for mentorship? And how can they get your books?
Okay, well, I first of all, my email is an email. I have a website, and they can see on the website, but because I had so many erroneous and crazy people to contact me, was crazy. I took that link off of my my website, but they can look and see about me on SuzettaPerkins.com. That's my website. My email is NUBIANQE2 at AOL.com. And of course, I'm on Facebook at Suzetta Perkins. Uh, I'm on, I don't even really look at the Twitter that much anymore, but I'm at Author Sue on Twitter, and Instagram, I'm just Suzetta Perkins.
And your books are available on your website and on Amazon?
Well, they can go to my website, and I have links that'll take them directly to Amazon.
Okay. All righty then. Well, guys, Suzetta Perkins has been our guest today on Talk with Taz. She has a wealth of knowledge to help the aspiring writer to start their path to publishing. So she's provided her contact information. So please reach out to her. And before you go taking care of someone else, please make sure you take care of yourself first. If I can help you with your content creation, you know I'm an editor. I edit many different documents, not just books. So even simple letters that have to be written a certain way. So there's no document that is not too small of a document to be edited, because you want to always make sure you put your best foot forward. So reach out to me if you need those sorts of services. And also, if you'd like to get your message out, please contact me for an interview. I have folks who follow me all around the globe, and we want to get your message out to the masses. So again, before you go trying to take care of someone else, please make sure you take care of yourself first. Bye now.